Don't be the brown bear in a massive snowstorm. Buy Bitcoin and survive, or get your family bloodline is gone, brother, is gone, or minimal filters, so that we have a pure state of spirituality, a pure state of love. That's the Bitcoin singularity. That's also kind of rapidly approaching. And then we enter the Bitcoin singularity. It's a spiritual moment and reunion with our creator. So that happens thanks to Bitcoin, perfect money, and the triumph of aesthetics over politics.
Hey guys, welcome to Everyday Finance. The warning is being sounded by Max Keiser. Bitcoin is on the verge of reaching 100x, while everything else is heading in the direction of zero. Keiser, who has been a Bitcoin maximalist for a long time, and who is also an advisor to the president of El Salvador, believes that this moment marks the beginning of a full-blown monetary revolution. Since surpassing $100,000 for the first time in December 2024, Bitcoin has frequently surpassed that milestone, most recently reaching an all-time high of $122,838. On July 14th, when it reached that level, Keiser is of the opinion that Bitcoin is currently completely distancing itself from the monetary system, and that any nation or state that does not have Bitcoin is doomed to come to an end. He asserts that this marks the beginning of a worldwide repricing, one in which Bitcoin reigns supreme. Fiat currency is rendered obsolete, and a new financial order is established. Stay with the video until the very end to hear Keiser describe how the death of fiat currency will play out, as well as the reasons why Bitcoin holders will have a significant impact on the future.
We got to gold. Gold was the best money out there for thousands of years. And then Bitcoin came around and usurped gold as the ultimate perfect money. And that's why Bitcoin is demonetizing gold. People are selling their gold to buy Bitcoin. People are selling their real estate to buy Bitcoin. Commercial real estate in America is collapsing, in part because people no longer want to be in that business. They're buying Bitcoin. It's demonetizing the fine art market. It's demonetizing the bond market, which is the biggest honeypot, like $200 trillion. You see, the bond market is continuing to run into problems, particularly in the U.S. The U.S. is finding it very, very, very difficult to sell U.S. Treasury bonds to anybody except themselves. And that's in part because people want Bitcoin. They don't want U.S. Treasury bonds anymore. It was a primary money for so many years, but the U.S. dollar no longer world reserve currency. So I don't want U.S. Treasury bonds. I want Bitcoin. So it's demonetizing the bond market. That's a $200 trillion honeypot that's going to move from bonds to Bitcoin. So that's 100x from 2 million right now, 2 trillion. Right, to 200 trillion, that's 100x. So the price is 120,000 times 100. And that's a fair estimate of where we're going just on the demonetization of bonds, not even considering the demonetization of gold and property.
So 100x would be a conservative estimate.
No, well, it's a big number. And we're heading there. So why are you trying to time the market? Why people say, what's my price target? My price target is everything that's not Bitcoin is worthless. Everything goes to zero against Bitcoin. That's my price target.
Yeah.
Anything that you have that's not Bitcoin goes to zero. That's my price target. Whatever the only money you'll ever have in your life is Bitcoin. Nothing else will serve as money ever. And that bond apocalypse and that moment of reconciliation, that moment of truth about what Bitcoin means is rapidly approaching. And if you don't have Bitcoin, you're going to be a no coiner. And if you're a no coiner, you are going to be extinct. Gone. Just like there's a bunch of bears on a hill, and then there's brown bears, then there's a white bear, and the brown bears are like, ha ha ha, look at that white bear. He's going to get killed. Right? Then there's a big, massive snowstorm. The white bear, he survives. All the brown bears get killed. So don't be the brown bear in a massive snowstorm. Buy Bitcoin and survive, or get your family bloodline is gone, brother, is gone. And I think that at some point, as I said a little while ago, when you enter the Bitcoin singularity and your Bitcoin become my Bitcoin and my Bitcoin become your Bitcoin, the whole idea of money disappears completely. And we have a massive upgrade as humans and the evolutionary step change to a post-egocentric existence as animals on planet Earth. And we become more spiritual, where money is like, doesn't really mean much. We're just basically vibing in each other's consciousness, thanks to Satoshis that are being exchanged freely without any filters or minimal filters, so that we have a pure state of spirituality, a pure state of love. That's the Bitcoin singularity. That's also kind of rapidly approaching. Every Bitcoin you have, you are helping facilitate the collapse of the fiat money world. So that we have to collapse the fiat money world. That's why when the corporate treasury companies are kind of reunifying money with state, and to me, they're like, it's great that there's a huge demand for Bitcoin, but they're also kind of keeping alive the organism that should already be dead, to a degree. And so there's kind of delaying the process. So, but inevitably it will go down the path anyway. They're just putting in a minor speed bump toward that. But so the philosophy is that our species has a collective unconscious almost fetish with our shared aesthetic, and that our satisfaction and connection to God on this earth is to exercise that shared aesthetic. And Bitcoin allows for that to happen universally. And then we enter the Bitcoin singularity into a spiritual moment and reunion with our creator. So that happens thanks to Bitcoin, perfect money, and the triumph of aesthetics over politics.
According to Max Keiser, we are currently witnessing the gradual destruction of institutions such as central banks, bureaucracy, and global lenders, and Bitcoin is at the center of this process. To put it another way, Bitcoin is only eliminating the requirement for these institutions without directly competing with them. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, which was once a formidable force in the world of finance, is currently witnessing its influence gradually diminish block by block. Considering that nations such as El Salvador are amassing Bitcoin reserves, Keiser forecasts that these holdings will eventually be used to pay off the debt of the International Monetary Fund, rendering the organization useless. If the world is driven by Bitcoin, there is no room for loans that are based on power and coercion. And there is also no room for institutions that function without the agreement of their customers. According to Keiser, this is a revolution by code, and the elites of the world were completely unaware of its impending arrival.
Going into debt to buy weapons to kill each other, which you then have to pay for by printing more money or borrowing more money. That means my Bitcoin goes higher. So, I could try to get you to buy Bitcoin and save you, but I'm conflicted, because the more you kill each other, the more my Bitcoin is worth. So, I'm conflicted. And you want me to help you, but you have to bottom out in the fiat money world. You have to bottom out on warmongering. You have to bottom out on your religious nonsense, to accept Bitcoin. If you're not going to, I don't care, because you're just going to print money to add into ad nauseum to infinity. And it just means Bitcoin goes to, it keeps going higher and higher. So, we'll see. The solution is here for you, but if you don't want it, I don't care. But again, if you're not ready to hear the message, it goes in one ear out the other, because you're addicted. It's like telling an alcoholic, it's saying, you're an alcoholic, you don't drink. And they're like, no, I just need this. I'll quit after this next drink. Or I'm not an alcoholic, my life's great. They say living in the gutter, right? It's a disease. Fiat money is a disease. And it's now about to wipe out billions. We first mentioned Bitcoin on Keiser Report at 30 cents. In December of 2010, Stacy mentioned it. She said, this is a new thing. She talked about it, and we chatted briefly about it at 30 cents in 2010. And then in 2011, we got more aggressively into it. We had some guests onto the show talking about Bitcoin. That's really more when we got down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. I saw that this was a way to separate money from state, which has always been the Hayekian dream. And in 1984, Hayek was saying, that he doesn't imagine there will ever be a money that will be outside state control unless there were some sly workaround.
Yeah.
Right. And Bitcoin is that sly workaround. So I always say that money existed before the state Bitcoin separates money from state. Bitcoin kills the state. So that's killing the state and central banks. So we're entering into a post-state, post-central bank world. So of the past 300 years. Well, the goal here is to kill the state by working on something called Node Nation, so that every Salvadoran household has a Bitcoin node and they have all the money. The state has no money. The state just does your bidding. So if you need a new airport, the node owners and the Bitcoin owners who own the state's money would decide whether or not to build that airport. Not the state doesn't have any money. The state is bankrupt, as it should be. The state should not have any money. They should not control the money. So that's my goal here, as I've expressed to the president many times. And I think that's where we're headed. And I think that's the future, is that you have the node owners who kind of run the world, and then they congregate in different groupings or tribes. And they come and they go, and it's like murmurations of starlings in the sky. They come together and you see these huge murmurations where starlings are flying in synchronization, and it looks fantastic. And then they disappear, right? And I think that's the future for Bitcoiners, that they come together for a few years or a few weeks or a few hours, and then they fly away and they create other groups, and they're totally mobile. They're totally free, because Bitcoin as perfect money means that we are living the dream hidden in our collective unconscious. And ultimately, my Bitcoin or your Bitcoin or my Bitcoin. And we're in actually a post-money world where just our love is the guiding principle of our existence as humans on planet Earth. And that's made possible by Bitcoin. Well, fear is a hugely profitable business, and love is not. It's not a profitable business. So there's no love on the New York Stock Exchange. Love is not currently trading anywhere except with Bitcoin. The price of love, you could say, is worth 2-point-something trillion dollars. That's the Bitcoin is love. And if you look at the stock exchange, it's dominated by pharmaceuticals, insurance companies, banks, defense contractors. They're all based on fear and hate. So all of these, I would say, gambling, casinos. So 99% of everything that's traded on exchanges around the world is fear-based and hate-based. And so Bitcoin comes around and it pushes that out of the way, and it's more love. He's an incredibly smart man. I would say he's a genius, and he listens. And that's he listened about Bitcoin. He knew about Bitcoin before he became president in 2019. He had talked about it, I believe, in 2016. And he talked about making Bitcoin legal tender back in those early days when he was mayor of San Salvador. And so we are definitely on a Bitcoin wavelength. And so, and my role here is to kind of push the envelope a little bit, and where Stacy, she runs the Bitcoin office, and she's actually in the day-to-day kind of role of facilitating and enabling the country to become more orange-pilled or Bitcoinized, and dealing with government. And for that, you need diplomatic skills, of which I have none. So I don't. So I'm more of thinking longer term, bigger picture, theoretical stuff. And so a lot of the stuff I come up with is dismissed immediately. Like I suggested, they cut the national anthem in half because it's the longest national anthem in the world. It takes over 4 minutes to sing. And by the time it's all over, you could have increased GDP by 2 or 3% in how much time you spend singing the national anthem. Just cut it in half. The whole song is actually repeated. It's just the same song repeated twice. Just play it once. You don't need to play it twice, So that kind of suggestion is immediately dismissed. Also, when you go into any restaurant, all the cutlery is wrapped in these little paper napkins that take like 5 minutes to unwrap. And by the time you do, the paper napkin is shredded. Okay, that's totally GDP destroying, productivity destroying. Don't wrap all the cutlery in these tight little paper napkins.
Sounds like it.
For thousands of years, gold was considered to be the most valuable kind of currency. However, Bitcoin changed all that. At this point, Bitcoin is not merely taking the place of gold as a form of value storage. Rather, it is evolving into a superior and unchangeable form of currency. The reason for this is that investors are selling gold, real estate, and even art in order to get Bitcoin. The value is being extracted from each and every major asset class. According to Max Keiser, the most valuable asset is the bond market, which is worth over $200 trillion, and it is experiencing a more rapid decline than any other asset. Bitcoin is becoming increasingly popular as investors' confidence in bonds continues to decline. According to Keiser, this move alone has the potential to send Bitcoin 100 times higher. And this is without taking into account the collapse of gold or real estate on its own. As far as he is concerned, we are currently in the midst of a global financial reset. In addition, at the reset, everything that is not Bitcoin will be reset to zero. You are not prepared for the shakeout that is about to occur if you do not have any Bitcoin in your possession.